The same people that wrote about it, they were suppressing it. The same people that came over here and witnessed these things were suppressing it. Why? Because they didn't want the world to know that these people are Israelites. But you know what? Doesn't matter, because it's still, the truth is pure. The truth has nothing holding it down. There's no weights on the truth. And the truth is always being pushed to the top. Man, and it's going to float to the top of the water.
I got something else for you in this book.
You know what? Let him read this real quick, and then you can bring that out.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 22.
28.
28. Okay, cunt. 28. Can I read 22 and then jump?
Okay, yeah.
It says, he revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him.
Because anything that's being secret, the Most High knows. I don't give a fuck how dark it is in that room. You can't see your hand in front of your face. Whatever you're doing in that room is going to be brought to the surface. That's why all this information is coming out now. Because for the longest it was being hid. But now it's coming out to the light. Go ahead.
28. But there is a power in heaven that revealeth secrets.
There is a power in heaven that revealeth secrets. That's why these things are coming out. Because prior to the 69, 70, around there, the majority of Israelites didn't know that they were Israelites. We just all thought that we were just whatever. You know, we were just Indians, you know, Boricua, Taino Indians, or whatever, Seminole Indians, Native American Indian, whatever, Muskogees, Black, Haitian, West Indian. Our people all thought that that's what they were. But after a certain period of time, the Most High revealed those secrets. Go ahead.
Right. But there is a power in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days.
In the latter days. No, and that was speaking about in the latter days of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. But in today's lesson, because the scriptures say what? The things that were written aforetime was written for our learning. So there is a power in heaven that revealeth secrets. And that's why these secrets are coming out now. You got some?
Well, on what you were saying earlier when you said about them, how they were saying that the Gadites and different tribes in the Americas are Chinese and this and that bullshit. Now, James Adair says this in History of the American Indian by James Adair, page 73 and 74. Some have supposed the Americans, talking about the American Indians, to be descent from the Chinese, but neither their religion, laws, customs, and etc. agree in the least with those of the Chinese.
Did you hear that, bitch?
The customs of the Native American Indians.
Read that again, my brother.
Okay, I'm gonna read it again. Page 73 here at the bottom. Some have supposed the Americans. Some have supposed the Americans to be descended from the Chinese, but neither their religion, laws, customs, etc. agree in the least with those of the Chinese.
Did you hear that, bitch?
Which sufficiently proves they are not of that line. Besides, as our best ships now are almost half a year in sailing to China, or from thence to Europe, it is very unlikely they should attempt such dangerous discoveries in early time, with their supposed small vessels against rapid currents.
Right. That was before, prior to the 1400s. That was it's talking about going way back during the time when the Israelites came over here to the side of the world around 724 BC or 720 BC in that era. Because when you bring it up to the 1400s, the Chinese had a major shipping industry, and they had certain ships that were able to sail the seas, right, and to be able to withstand all the storms and the hurricanes and tornadoes and the monsoons that were brought. And they were able to come over to this side of the world. That's why in 1421 there's an actual map, a Chinese map of the so-called Americas, because they came over to this side of the world and they made a map. But prior to that, they didn't have the means to come over here. Now you might say, well, what about the Israelites? How did they come over here? Well, first of all, the Israelites that were in the land of Syria, they already knew about King Solomon's navy. They already knew about the Sidonians. They already knew how they built their ships. So the ships that they built, even if they were small or a little larger or just not fit to make it to the side of the world, the Lord said what? That he held back the storms and the floods so that they can pass to this side of the world. Why? To fulfill the prophecies of the Most High.
Right.
That's why.
Got some more for you.
Go ahead, brother.
It says, this is dealing with, it says, in early time, it's talking about the question if the Chinese in early times, basically back in 700 something BC, were able to sail this way. In early times, with their supposed small vessels against rapid currents and in dark and sickly monsoons, especially as it were very probable they were unacquainted with the use of the lodestone to direct their course. Talking about the early Chinese. They weren't acquainted with something called the lodestone, which was used as a weight on the boat so you can navigate the boat through, you know, rigorous and treacherous waters. It says China is about 8,000 miles distant from the American continent, which is twice as far across the Atlantic Ocean. We are not informed by any ancient writer of their maritime skill, or so much as any inclination that way besides. Small coasting voyages, the winds blow likewise with a little variation from east to west.
Them waters are treacherous. That's
right.
why. What do you think Paul told them people that were trying to leave that island? He said, look, just stay, let's winter here, you know, because it's going to be rough waters. And what they do, they ain't listen. And what happened to that ship? That ship got jacked up and beat down. Why? And that was just in the Mediterranean Sea. Yep. So imagine in the open sea of like of an ocean like the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or something like that.
Be with you.
The Most High Yahweh Shemel Shai got to be with you for you to cross that.
That's right.
You know, so the scriptures specifically say that the Lord held back those floods and those winds and that storm so that they can get to their passage can be over here safely. Why? Because the Lord had a purpose for these people in the last days.
Right. That purpose in the last days. As a matter of fact, a movie Hollywood made called The Perfect Storm, starring George Clooney and this other guy, I forget the other guy's name.
Mark Wahlberg.
And in the movie, they were sailing, they were Gloucestermen, they were sailing trying to find a big fish to come back and set the market. So he said, look, we're going to sail around the Horn. And the guy said, whoa, a lot of bad weather. The Horn? Because you got the Horn of South America and you got the Horn of Africa, where the worst weather conditions on the planet exist. Like in the movie The Perfect Storm. So there's no way. And Jake came under the Horn of Africa. Coming through the Euphrates, they sailed under the Horn of Africa and then came into the Americas through there. And they came to the Americas through there. Now James Adair is telling you in here. James Adair is telling you that about the pattern how the winds blow. He's telling you about the patterns of how the winds blow, James Adair, that there was no way in hell that the Chinese could have came from China down here to the Americas back at that time.
Right.
And I'm gonna read it again. It says China is about 8,000 miles distant from the American continent, which is twice as far across the Atlantic Ocean. And we are not informed by any ancient writer of their maritime skill, or so much as any inclination that way besides. Small coasting voyages. The winds blow likewise within little variation from east to west, within the latitudes of 30-odd north and south. And therefore they could not have driven them on the American coast, it lying directly contrary to such a course. And that's what James Adair says.
That's right.
History of the American Indians. So now we're going to go back into this, what's this guy, Kingsborough?
Yeah, Lord Kingsborough. Yeah.
Lord Kingsborough. Now it says the words of Las Casas lo que la tua manifestum te face. Your speech betrays you in reference to the Mexicans or some other tribe of Indians whom he took to be real Jews.
Right, because
Volume
they were
6,
speaking
page 332.
Because they were speaking Hebrew, guy.
Original Indian traditions record that the province of Guatemala was in early ages colonized by the Jews who assumed the names Toltecas and established a powerful monarchy in that district of America. Volume 8, page 9.
Which were Israelites, which are those Aztec and Mayan Indians, Incas, or whatever type of Indians was in that region. Okay?
It says Sahagun's history of New Spain does certainly contain many metaphors and figures of speech evidently derived from the scriptures and which unequivocally prove the existence in former ages at least of the Hebrew language in America.
Right, because
Volume 8, page 163.
Because when they came over to this side of the world, the so-called indigenous people, they were speaking the language and they were leaving certain relics of themselves. But then after a certain period of time, they lost it.
Columbus brought Hebrew interpreters with him Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, Ronald Sanders, pages 92 and 93.
So read that real
As a matter of
quick.
fact, I got it right
Well,
here.
I got the thing right here.
Oh, you got the
Yep.
page right there?
Yep,
Okay.
we got the page. All right, I'm gonna read right to the point. It says, we do not know much concerning Columbus's crew of about 90 men aboard 3 ships, but at least one of them was an Israelite whose presence as such was not merely accidental. This was Luis de Torres, a convert of possibly only that year, who had once held a position with the governor of Murcia. He was said to have known Hebrew, Aramaic, and some Arabic, and had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter.
He was brought of he what? What? Read that part again.
He said, and he had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter.
So the purpose of Luis de Torres to being brought over here was specifically to be an interpreter, because this devil knew where he was going. Don't listen to that bullshit in history that tells you that Columbus was looking for another route to India. That's the same bullshit that they teach you that Columbus discovered America. That's another fucking lie. So he wasn't coming this route to seek another route to India. He was coming over here because he knew that this land existed and the Hebrew Israelites were over here. That's why he quoted scriptures out of the Apocrypha in that movie 1492 or Conquest 1492 or whatever the hell the name of that movie is.
14
Okay?
something, yeah. It says, one of the purposes of the voyage, as we have seen, was to find the Great Khan.
Which is a goddamn lie, because he's trying to say the Great Khan of like in the land of India. Go ahead.
And Torres was to be the mouthpiece for this encounter, presumably on the basis of his Hebrew. Perhaps Columbus and his supporters had decided that the Great Khan, reported on by Marco Polo and others, might be the Israelite king who dwelt across the river from Prester John.
Right, so you know they basically throw their bullshit in there, but the truth is that the reason why Columbus brought a Hebrew interpreter with him was for the purpose of communicating with the people that were here, and that's why certain other European sources say that, like for instance, in the land of Hispaniola, the so-called among the so-called Dominicans, it's when they encountered them, they were speaking Hebrew. When Montesinos in Lost Tribes and Promised Land, you know the story a little better than I
actually
do.
got it there.
All right, bring it out.
Okay, matter of fact, I'll get it.
So Montesinos, when he came over here, he met a guide, an Indian guide, in the mountains of Quito, which is down in Ecuador.
Mount Quito.
Right, Mount Quito, which the guide's name was Francisco. You know, he was one of them so-called he was one of them Indian tribes, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and when he was down there, you know, he told Montesinos about the certain tribes that were calling themselves Israelites, you know, that spoke the Hebrew language, you know, and that there were certain people within that region that were Israelites. You got it yet, brother?
Yeah, it says Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, chapter 30, page 363. In September 1644, a Portuguese Marrano named Antonio de Montesinos arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America, and proceeded to tell the leaders of the recently established Jewish community there a story that caused them to think of him as a latter-day Eldad, the Danite. 2.5 years before, he told them, while traveling in the wild mountains of Quito, he had heard some of his Indian guides remark that the natives of that country deserved all the suffering they had undergone at the hands of the Spaniards, when he asked them to explain why they thought such a thing. They had replied mysteriously that it was because we so badly treated a holy people, the greatest in the world. Nothing more had been offered by them on this point, but later in some conversation, Francisco, one of the Indian guides, had declared that his countrymen would be avenged upon the Spaniards in time anyway, by means of a people now hidden. The two references apparently were to the same people, but Montesinos, not seeing their full meaning in that moment, had put the whole matter out of his mind for the time being. I'm gonna
Yeah,
just
just
go to the
basically,
point.
go to the point, yeah.
It says, let me see.
The part where he was speaking to them
Right, where he was speaking to the
when
Indians.
he
I got it right
when
here.
they came in the canoe.